These little koi bettas started as fry so small that the camera could barely focus on them. I documented this group from the breeding setup through the first free swimming stage and all the way to adult size. The most difficult part was not getting them to grow. It was what happened when the young males could no longer live together. The project began with a Koi Betta pair. I placed the female inside a clear container so the two fish could see one another without making direct contact. The male immediately displayed around her. This introduction stage let me watch their behavior before allowing the breeding process to continue. The breeding setup was kept at room temperature, around 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. That is a record of this project, not a universal temperature recommendation for breeding bettas. I did not record every water measurement or exact event time, so this video will focus on the growth stages the archive actually proves. The female was removed immediately after spawning. That was important because once spawning was finished, keeping both adults together would create unnecessary risks. The male stayed behind while the eggs developed. His job was finished only after the fry became free swimming, and that was when I removed him too. I did not make an exact hatch count. At this scale, counting every fry accurately would have been difficult anyway. What matters for this documentary is that the growth is recorded in a continuous series. At first, the free swimming fry looked like tiny dark marks against the tank. In the next clips, there were enough of them visible that their movement filled the frame. They were still extremely small, but the group was already becoming easier to follow. This stage is where food can make or break the project. I started the fry on live baby brine shrimp. The movement of live food made it easier for the tiny bettas to recognize and hunt it. Later, I switched them to frozen baby brine shrimp. The change made feeding more practical as the group grew, while keeping a familiar type of food in their diet. The sequence shows how quickly the fry changed. At first, they were still a cloud of tiny bodies. In the following growth stage, their shapes became more distinct. Soon after that, individual color and pattern differences began to stand out. Before long, this no longer looked like a tank full of nearly invisible fry. They were behaving like young fish, moving confidently through the plants and gathering whenever food appeared. The grow-out footage is especially useful because it shows the same brood repeatedly through several stages. Their increasing size and color are visible without needing an artificial before and after effect. This is the advantage of a real archive. The transformation is not generated, reconstructed, or borrowed from another breeder. These are the same Koi Bettas growing in the same project. As the juveniles grew, the biggest challenge became managing the males. Young male bettas eventually become territorial. I had to separate them into individual small containers so they could continue developing without fighting and damaging one another. This required space, repeated feeding, observation, and maintenance for every separate fish. It was easily the most labor-intensive stage of the project. The females were different. I was able to keep the young females together without any problems. That contrast, individual containers for the males and a shared grow-out space for the females, became one of the most important practical lessons from this breeding project. As the juveniles matured, the differences between individuals became unmistakable. Some stayed pale, while others developed stronger blue, red, and dark marbled patterns. The later footage shows fish that already look close to adults. By the final stage, the group had reached adult size. The final result was not one identical line of fish. It was a collection of Koi Bettas with different patterns, colors, and personalities, all produced from the same documented project. Looking back, the breeding itself was only the beginning. Feeding tiny fry required consistency, but separating and maintaining the growing males was the real commitment. If you want to see the individual adult males, the females kept together, and how their patterns developed, that can be the next chapter of this archive. Subscribe to Build the Blue for more real aquarium projects, documented from the first setup to the final result.